Chris Wall, thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
So for everybody's benefit, Chris Wall is a friend of mine from our alma mater, Oral Roberts University, but you've experienced some consistent success in your life, in your, look, I know I saw this look on your face, but in your, whenever I look at the path of your life, it looks like super easy. Chris Wall glides, how many kids?
6 children.
6 kids. But then probably the most notable thing in my mind is your time at Big Idea with Veggie Tales. Mm-hmm. And I just remember one day watching Veggie Tales and seeing Chris Wall's name come up in the credits as, editing or producing or whatever. I'm not sure all the different titles, so I can remain ignorant. But this thinking, man, Chris kind of a big deal. He's kind of something, I don't know. And I know you don't see it that way, and you've always been so humble. But then, so tell me a little bit about the journey that led you to Nashville, because you and Heather lived here. And I remember you going to Steelehouse Productions every day on a Honda Metro.
Little scooter.
Get it done. And you lived down in Midtown. Yeah. And that was countercultural for that time, and probably still is. Do you still have the scooter?
I do, yeah. I actually was just texting with my younger son, Calvin, this morning. Mm-hmm. Please drive the scooter to your football practice.
Yeah.
He's 15. With a permit, you can drive the scooter. And I'm like, don't make your grandma drive you. You just drive yourself. Come on.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're still rocking it.
Uh-huh.
It's great. Yeah, it's so interesting when you say all that, Shay, because I don't see it that way at all. Like, it's. I remember living in the apartments just up the street from where we are here. Mm-hmm. We just drove by on the way over here. And, as a young married couple, still in school, trying to figure out how we're going to live, and really, it's a struggle. Like, it was hard. And I remember eating popcorn. Like, that was the only food we had in the house. That's it,
Yeah.
And having professors leaving little envelopes of cash under our doorstep, like, just on the outside, we're just living, and we love each other. It's Heather and I meet, shoulder to shoulder, us against the world, kind of. And so there's moments of celebration, but I think so much of that is positioning, is just saying, there's a hard attitude of like, oh, that's going to be hard. Right. Mm-hmm. And you either are just going around telling everyone how hard it's going to be, to be a young married couple in college, and then expecting your first child, and then, getting your first job, and it's barely enough to pay bills, and driving old rusty cars. And there's a way that can be really kind of sad and trying to draw empathy, and there's a way that's like, look at this, like we've got everything we need to move forward. Mm-hmm. And so to someone else, it's like, well, that sounds like success, right?
Yeah.
It's the same experience as the same person going through the same exact experience and going, oh man, you're just barely making it. Whew, so hard for you. We just didn't have that attitude. And we just, it's a palms up curiosity, I think, is something that Heather and I have always had, which is, all right, God, we believe that you've given us resource and time and everything we need to do what's next. We just got to be curious enough to figure out what that is. We have one car, but I have to go to work. And if I go to work and you're home alone, hun, boy, hey, so I saw somebody with a scooter and they're really cheap. What if I got a scooter? Yeah, but it's like icy in Tulsa. Yeah, but I think I could do it, and like, and we have pictures of me in my winter jackets, fully covered in ice, having driven home in a snowstorm.
That kind of reminds me of Dumb and Dumber.
It totally is. Yeah. It's not as glamorous as you think. It's really difficult. So it and that's like kind of sad. Like, you're like, oh, working professional have to do. Yeah, I mean, that's, you just do.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's certainly, stepping away from any sort of sense of entitlement, and I certainly credit my parents for I'm the oldest of 7, and we grew up in fairly limited means, and paid for my own college, that kind of thing. And so there's just a scrappiness, a resourcefulness that says, this is how it is. And I think that overriding all of that is grit. I heard years ago this conversation about the most successful CEOs in America. And is it their intellect? Is it their ethnicity? Is it their height? Is it their gender? Is like, what are the things that are and they did all this evaluation. And the thing that they found overwhelmingly present in all these really successful CEOs was grit. This ability to stay with the problem for a long time. And that's always been my space. I'm embarrassingly slow at solving the problem, but I won't let go of it. It's like my son Calvin's playing football, and he's known as the ankle tackler because he's not very big physically, but he's ferocious, and he will absolutely pull someone to the ground on their shoelaces, right?
Yeah, because you just trip them up.
Just stay. And he's the guy, he's the kid that the guy's got to drag across the field. I'm not big and athletic and fast and able to do, what a lot of folks in my field can do, but I've got some grit to stay with it, and I say that because I remember coming up and worked at Impact Productions, Tom Newman, who's just a stud. Dude is a business brilliant mind and could find a way to make a project and make a deal and I don't have any of that. And I remember just feeling such a shadow of that and going, phew, not that guy, man. And it's probably that and just seeing others like Tom that turned my brain off to ever considering helming something like that, because it's like, well, I'm not him. I don't look like Jesus. Tom Newman looks like Jesus. Yeah. He's wonderful.
And he's also very tall. He's
tall.
He's got this stature.
Got charisma. He's got all the things, right? And I don't, and I'm not business trained, and there's all those things. So I remember, which is interesting because I tell you that I'm curious the way we kind of, but I also I'm aware now of some real blind spots where I had kind of cut some things off that like don't ever consider myself doing this type of thing. Do whatever talent is immediately apparent, but don't try to develop or pursue other talents that may be present. And I remember the first time it was in 2005, I think I had that right, maybe early 06, that the head of studio at Big Idea, Veggies, I'd been hired to be editor and producer there of DVD features, came to me and said, hey, I think I see in you the ability to be a producer like he was. And I was like, oh, no, because that involved business stuff that I don't really do. And he said, no, I really think, he said, here's what I want to do. We're going to do this thing with NBC, with 321 Penguins and Veggies and kind of a repackaging of some of our materials. And he said, I want you to produce that. And I think you come out of that, let's see what you have, right?
Yeah.
And so I did, and near the end of that, that gentleman left the company very suddenly. And then some months later, they said, hey, Chris, we want you to step in as head of production. And because I'd had this taste, and I really found like, oh, I could be a producer.
Yeah.
But that's like Tom Newman. I don't know. I just was so intimidated. I remember telling some of the my mentors at that time, like, I was in my early 30s, and like, I don't think I'm ready for this. Like, no, you're fine, because you have the decision making and the leadership ability. You don't have the background experience of some of the way this works executively, but we can resource you. That's actually easy. To help you build that part out. And they gave me a shot. And that really changed massively the trajectory of my career, because up to that point, it was really just do the work that was being given to me by those that were running these companies and not guiding as much. And then it was a real shift. It was Steelehouse did some of that, but it was still kind of in my wheelhouse of just being more of like a technical engineer, kind of setting up some systems and not really taking on that leadership, and that shifted. And it's interesting that we talked about ORU, but I credit a lot of my leadership growth being an RA at ORU.
My RA was here last night.
Really?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
His name's Terry Bush. You may or may not have known
the name.
him.
Yeah.
But Terry was my RA my freshman year. And he came into town for his daughter for the weekend to get her going at ORU.
Yeah.
And so we had a little party here. And it was just kind of fun how much that character development, that I think it's just the nexus of the age you are, but also extreme positive influence and desire and guidance all at the right time.
Critically, though, testing whether you can do that with your peers
was huge.
Because to do that with like children, like if you're like volunteered in your Sunday school growing up or that kind of thing, whatever. But to do that with peers, to say, hey, there's a standard and we want to go to it, and I want to call you to it, and we're the same age, or you might even be older than me. I became an RA as a sophomore, you know, and I was
Okay.
like, okay, awkward, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So can you get through that? Because
Yeah.
that's about like influence, and that's about like there's a lot going on in there in the
Yeah.
sauce. I found as I've employed some people that are RAs, you know, I'm like,
Yeah.
I see it.
Yeah.
Because that's really what business life is like,
Yeah.
right?
It is a little more Darwinian. Like,
Yeah, sure.
you know, like,
Yeah.
I don't know how. So let me back up here a little bit because you like, there's so many things, Chris, that I'm impressed with you about, just your personhood. Okay. This is kind of weird, and I think this is fun to share, but because I already shared with you, like, I kind of feel like you kind of glided, and I knew that wasn't the truth, but I kind of feel like, man, look at how he's something, you know. And but then the other day you come into town for your daughter, and you say, hey, can I borrow your garage? I want to replace a part on your daughter's car. And I'm like, okay, sure. Like, you know, I mean, like I would probably pay to have that done for me, but you know, and so you come in and you just do this humble thing, right? Because you love her. And then, you know, in the midst of that conversation, we're sitting out there and you're telling me about your recent business wins, and you've raised how much money now?
$5 million. Yeah.
I mean, like, that's a big number.
Yeah,
that's, I mean, it's not a huge number. There's bigger numbers you're going to raise in the future. Sure. But at the same time, it's like, this guy's in my garage stewarding all of this creativity.
Yeah.
He's making an impact, but he's still willing to get his hands dirty. So I think there's something to be talked about there. And I'd love to hear more about that.
I think that, you know, you have to make decisive moves towards humility. That if you want to maintain that kind of relational connection with others, to build trust and have empathy and that sort of thing, you have to make moves towards humility. That you're like, this is who I am, and you have to be okay with that. Now, part of this is because I work in animation, right? Most of my career has been working in kids entertainment. And so there's also this, like, I don't know, it's kind of, you're comfortable in your own skin, that I don't need to project anything. And I find I really connect well with others of similar design. There's the strong leader that's like, wow, galvanizing, and, you know, we're going to take that hill kind of leader that's really incredible to me. I'm not that leader, and I'm okay to say I'm a different kind of leader, that is totally comfortable saying, hey, I'm going to do this fairly humble thing that would be beneath me, as a certain type of executive, right? And I don't feel that at all. And I think when you do that, it models for others that they have permission to behave similar. So I think it's decisive. I don't think it comes natural. I'm just going to say that right away. Like, there's a natural part of me that's like, what number can I call to fix that, make it go away, right? But there's other devoted. I love my daughter, and I want her to be safe, and you know, her door locks weren't working properly in her little car, and I knew how to fix it exactly the way I could fix it that would give her a long-term success. We're just going to get that done, you know. So let me pivot and say the other part of that is I'm a closer. So one of the things that I've been known for in my career is I complete things.
You finish.
I do not leave things open. Like, it may take me a heck of a long time, and that's embarrassing, but I will finish it. And I was known for it at probably Impact early on, but then certainly at Big Idea with Veggie Tales was very much, in Steelehouse. But with Big Idea, I was kind of, you know, legendary because I was the last point of contact for every one of the movies. And, you know, I made 16 movies, you know, hour-long direct-to-DVD movies with them. And I was the last point of contact. When it left my hands, that production, it would go out to make hundreds of thousands of copies made, you know. So technically it had to be right, quality, it had to be like hit all its marks, right? And so that's the area that I kind of grew in what people saw from me, you know, that I would finish it, right? And so a lot of the decisions that I end up making are finishing ones, that I'm going to stay with it till it's done, right? And so my daughter's car door, you know, not working. Like, it's like, we can get this done, and it's now I don't have to worry about her anymore. I think that I've found the pattern in my life now where that's a regular thing, you know, where I will stay with it till it completes, whatever that completion is. Because sometimes that completion means it's a shift, it doesn't get done, you know, something else happens.
So, favorite movie of all time, one of my favorites is the recent adaptation of True Grit with the Coen brothers. And, you see it at the end. Cogburn is literally shot up, dragging this girl across the night sky. She's dying. She has a rattlesnake bite. And for whatever reason, and I don't know, I mean, like the movie itself doesn't have like huge thematic lessons that it's teaching you. But I always almost cry as he's just ragged and he's finishing. He's going to do it, right? And he drags in at the very last moment and she lives, Anyway, I just think of that, and I think of the idea of grit around that, and it's like, okay, so my dad says something that's kind of interesting. He says, Shay, you can finish. So he's a 40, 50 years in contracting, building houses, doing cabinet work, He says you can start 10 houses before you can finish one. And so there is a character quality or maybe even a temperament, a personality that carries a human to finish well. So, yeah.
On the flip side of that too is seeing windows, right? I mean, so I'll open by saying, curiosity palms up. All right, God, what are you waiting for? Which can sound pretty passive. And there's a just waiting for the next thing, right? Kind of the jellyfish thing. Phil Vischer talks about that a bit in some of his business dealings. True, but I feel like I'm also an assassin. Like when I know there's a move to be made,
you're all in.
I will not. I move fast, and I will go. So. The Wingfeather Saga project, right?
Yes.
We that Slugs and Bugs show that I produced. A couple of these had little windows of where, okay, we can make a move and this can really have an opportunity. And I remember being in your upstairs in 2009, early, and was making a move on this kid's property. It was a book that I wanted to make into a film called The Squire and the Scroll. Do you remember this? And I remember being in your upstairs bedroom negotiating the deal on that to get the option for that book so that we could develop a screenplay to go shop it as a feature film.
I don't remember that.
You don't remember that? Yeah.
Because I wasn't in the negotiation, but you guys had come into town.
Yep.
You need a place to stay. We said,
Who was I shopping with back then? But
we kicked Isa out.
Just happened to be here. Yeah.
You were in Isa's room.
And I remember walking in that room upstairs and working to try to close that deal and get it right, And part of that is like this hilarious thing. So I think people like myself are often described as connectors, right? Where I don't know a whole lot, but I can go find it.
You can get the resources, the people.
So you hit me with, hey, Chris, I want to do a thing about a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know, Shay. Give me a minute. Hey, I know somebody that might know.
Yeah.
And if they don't know, they can find me somebody that knows, and I'll stay till we find the right answer. So I remember even negotiating that deal, going, I don't know what this should look like. I don't even know what the construct is. Like I was like, and I actually not long after that ran into a colleague who I'd produced some of our Veggie Tales stuff with in New Zealand, and he was a startup guy, just super clever. And he said, man, Chris, a lot of what you're going through is what I went through when I first came to Los Angeles. They talk about these markets that you have to go where the market's really vibrant. Because it's this, you're learning things that are more passive. They're not objective. You're just learning about how things get done in ways that if you're not in there, you don't know. I imagine that like when you're on like a football team and it's draft day, and the way in which I remember watching Moneyball and having that experience, like that's what's going on in there. I could never describe that to you except that I'd seen it, right?
Yes.
So I had not been able to be in those rooms to kind of figure out how do these business deals for entertainment get done. Like, I knew Tom had done them and had figured them out in some way, but I'd never been in there, in the room where it happens.
Well, and that's maybe because you were an excellent technician.
That's right. So I'm on the other side of the industry. Right. Yeah. So I'm creating the content, but I'm not in there making the deals for the content, and they're often, kind of separate. And I will say that was kind of deterring for me early on is that, oh, no, you're a technician. You do the technician thing.
Stay in your lane. And
I think that the going and finding what are the industry norms for the way in which this is done is really important to me. I very much dislike pulling over a deal that feels like it's not normative, you know, whether that's favoring me or favoring someone else.
Yeah.
It's like, can we get, what's the standard?
Yes.
Right? Okay, great. How close can we get to that? You know, or in our particular situation, adjust it for what we're doing. Right. But just do it as best we can do it to that. And so I'll spend a lot of time on that. Unfortunately, it's one of the areas that I kind of drag down is I'll wait on something to kind of figure out how it should be done and then land it and say, okay, this is how we're going to do it.
I don't think that's a weakness. I think that is,
I know colleagues who would have closed that deal in like 4 days and I'll be on it for like 2 months, you know, working out like, how should this be? And what should we do here? You know, kind of stuff. So I recognize that, when we think about like some of the projects I've worked on have taken so very long to develop, and some of that's my own thing, you know, and it's fine. I also think I talked to my buddy Keith Lengo. He's our CTO and our head of animation and CG at our company, and grew up in Buffalo, New York. He said, I grew up in a place where you made things. Like real things, you know, the steel mill, this kind of idea.
Yeah.
And the idea of making art was like almost magical and something distant, something somebody else did, but they're almost all Steven Spielberg is imaginary. Like it's not a real person that you could actually meet, and he doesn't actually do that as a real job. So this idea of making art as a thing, I grew up in a similar space. Like we enjoyed art, but like seeing it as like a professional thing that you do. Because I wasn't in one of the hubs, right? Los Angeles or New York or even Chicago, like where it's like this is where that kind of stuff gets done. And so felt that like I'm weird. And Keith and I call it, we're both unicorns in that we were seen as a certain type of cog because I had a skill technically, right? That I could technically do something, editorial or video production. I could technically master that. And great, that's your cog. Boop, you know, here you go. Yeah, but I also have this leadership thing, and I really feel drawn to innovation, and like I think I could create some things, you know. And so you want to be a director? No, I'm not. I don't have that skill at all. But yeah, I think that because there was these standards of like, hey, if you have this talent, then go do that. That's your thing. And the idea that you could bridge over to another thing, there's like there's quadrants within these kind of.
Well, there's massive opposition.
Yeah, and they're like, no, you do that thing. No, I want to do this thing. No, you don't do that. What's true is that a lot of the innovative business leaders in our industry are multi-quadrant, meaning they have pretty adept skill in multiple places. Yep. At one part of my career, I was absolutely a unicorn. I remember talking to Tom about that. He's like, Chris, what do you want to be? You know, and I was like, well, I want to be a storyteller, you know. And he's like, oh, so director? I don't know that I want to be a director. So editor. I like editing. Okay, well, how about you edit, you know? And I remember thinking, that's not complete yet. You know, screenwriter? No, I don't love writing scripts. You know, and so finding myself as an executive now and you know, executive producer running my company, I see all of the abilities and talents that God's given me being used.
Yes.
But I couldn't see them before in that light. And you know,
it's kind of like the wax on, wax off.
It is, yeah. And
you know,
where this is the most delightful thing that I had for years developed kind of leadership abilities, gone to conferences, and just because I loved it, like I'm like, wow, I don't know how I'm going to use this, but man, I love, you know, the RA program.
Yeah,
had to literally kind of kick that off.
You went to Catalyst for
many years, probably 10 years, and just really being fed by that, and like, okay, I want to think about these ways to innovate, and I love innovation, like thinking about problems and finding new solutions, basically, and then finding when the time came, here's a demand. The guy was set before me of like, hey, can you do this, right? Oh, I have that skill.
Yeah.
Wax on. Whoa, weird. I had no idea that was what I was developing that for, or what God was developing that in me to use. And the great delight today of having that, all these little parts of me that have developed over the years, and God saying, hey, I'm going to use this part of you. And I think because I didn't blunt them and say, that's not a part of my core cog, that I remain curious and let those things continue to develop for whatever reason, I don't know. It's the funniest thing because we'll be in these conversations and I'll be like, oh, yeah, I know about that subject and I have some skill in it, and let me help illuminate so that we can all go the same direction, you know, and I can create more space for us to create something else together, whether that's a new business development or whether that's a creative idea or whatever that is, that it's just delightful. But I will tell you, early in my career, it was, I remember just being really shut down for that and going, I don't know why I have all these other avenues that I'm feeling, but I don't have a way to go forward on them. And, you know, and it was was very frustrating, you know, like, well, I'll just keep doing this one thing.
Well,
you know?
I think that's a common frustration in young people.
Sure.
And it was common in me.
Yep.
When you enter into this organization and you just think, well, man, I just got a business degree. And if the owner of the company sits down next to me and says, well, what do you want to do, Shay? And I'm going to say, I want to sit in your seat.
Ultimately,
you
yeah,
know,
right.
Like
yeah.
ultimately, like, you know, but you can't see all of the pain and the struggle and honestly, your own personal drawbacks and weaknesses that perhaps maybe people close to you see. And you just want to jump steps along the way. But then as you get older, you know, I'm in my, you know, late 40s now. These skills and these gifts and they come to light, don't they? And then and now we can use them. We can flex that muscle. So let's go now to the Wingfeather Saga because that is what's on your plate right now.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. And you've crowdfunded $5 million and you're getting into another season of funding coming up. So tell me about this whole thing. So I've got this book. You actually you came here 2 years ago and you got my kids jazzed about these books.
Yeah.
And then I think you gave us one and then we bought the other three or something like that. I don't know how it all happened, but my kids love you because you're just so filled with desire. And so it lit their fire. They've all read the books. And so tell me how all this came about.
Yeah. Okay. So in 2006, we were doing the Pirates Who Don't Do Anything feature film with Universal.
Okay.
With Veggie Tales. And Mike Naraki was directing that, and he wrote all the silly songs with Larry, right? That's like his thing. That's the thing that he always contributed to Veggie Tales early on when he and Phil started that. And Where's My Hairbrush and, you know, Cheeseburger and all these wonderful songs. And so I said, hey, Mike, we've got this production that I'm on, Wizard of Oz. It was my first Veggie Tales produced gig, and we need a silly song. And he was like, man, Chris, I'm in Toronto. We're slamming this thing, and I just do not have headspace for writing something silly right now. He said, I know that sounds super lame. I said, okay, let me work on something. And I had just gotten introduced to Andrew Peterson as a songwriter. I knew about him, but he and his buddy Randall had written some silly songs for their children that they decided to record one time. And so we'd gotten this little copy of the CD from another friend that was Slugs and Bugs and Lullabies and little CD. And I'd gotten it and I was like, oh, I hate kids music. And so I gave it to Heather. And she called me the next day and was like, you listen to it at all? I said, no, I didn't listen to it. And she's like, it's really good. It's really funny. You should check it out. I was like, really? And so I listened to it and it was delightful. It was clever and whimsical. And it reminded me of old Smothers Brothers. You know if you remember the Smothers Brothers.
Yeah.
It reminded me of that, just kind of the relationship these two dudes had. And I was like, okay, these guys are really funny. And I knew he was a professional songwriter. And I was like, man, would this be insulting if I reached out to him and asked him to, you know, write a silly song for us? And so I reached out to Andrew and was like, hey, would you and Randall be interested in pitching silly songs for Veggie Tales? And they're like, yeah, sure, that sounds like fun. Oh man, that's great. So they came in and pitched a couple songs, and we recorded the Monkey Silly Song, which you can look it up on YouTube. It's really funny. And they did like 2 or 3 more. And so I got to know Andrew then. And then had the weird thing where in 2008, he turned and gave me a copy of this first book. Okay, again, he's a known, kind of a Rich Mullins type folk singer-songwriter.
In Nashville.
Long career in that industry. Side thing doing these little silly songs. You know, that's kind of still in the same space. Then says, I'm going to author a children's fantasy novel, you know? And you just kind of go, oh, sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, you know, Priscilla Shire, right? So she's a wonderful author and speaker, and she's also authored a kids fantasy series. And she's known as this wonderful, you know, woman of prayer and just really great person. And then she came out with a fantasy series a couple years ago, and I had the same reaction, like, I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah.
Right. You know, like when people move across, you know.
You never know.
So I read the first book, and it was delightful. Like, it was like, wow, this is actually, there's something going on here. Like, this is fun, you know. But it wasn't like, you know, just, it was like, well, this is good. The second book was like, oh my gosh,
better.
Wow. Like, okay, he's got a story here. We're going someplace. So we read along the series from 2008 through 2014 is when the last book came out. By the end of the series, like, I had cried multiple times as a dad trying to read to my kids. Like, it was just powerful. It just moved me. Key moment. I think anytime we experience anything like that is overwhelming and beautiful, whether that's on a hike in nature or some, you know, emotional experience we have, like, we all have these touchstone moments that, like, really do something for us. Those become really Holy Spirit moments to clue in to say, there's probably something here.
Yeah.
Right? And so it stuck with me. Like, there was this, like, whoa, man, that was a powerful experience. I can't imagine being able to take that and share that story in another format, like in a series. Like, wow, that'd be so incredible, but so hard. And I don't have that ability at all. But wow, that'd be brilliant to think about. And so over the years, Andrew would message me with different producers who would approach him on developing the project, and I kind of kept in contact on that side of it, but certainly never saw myself in that. 2015, got to the end of the road with Veggie Tales. They'd done all these direct-to-video releases, and we were owned by DreamWorks Animation at that point. They'd bought us in 2012, and it'd been a wonderful journey. And they said, we're done with this, but we'd love to have you come with us out to California and be a producer here at DreamWorks. What do you want to do? And I was like, man, I don't think
wait a second. So you had an offer in 2015 to be a producer for DreamWorks.
Correct. Because we were in that system, and I was already a producer with Veggie Tales in the DreamWorks system, and they'd gotten to know me and, you know, knew that I was proficient. It's like, hey, let's move you out here to Glendale, and you can jump into one of our series out here. It'd be awesome. And I was like, I don't know if that's my move. I'd had a real opportunity in my career to always have pretty meaningful projects. You know, from the early days with Tom Newman working on You Are Special, the Max Lucado was one of the first anime things I worked on, up through Veggie Tales. Just meaningful projects that were meaningful to families and spiritually meaningful, that kind of thing. And I was like, if I go out there, I'm just going to work on whatever, right? It could just be just some cartoon. I mean, and I don't know if that's the place. And we were really rooted in Nashville, so prayed about it. And Heather and I said, you know, declined gracefully. Thank you so much.
Did that take massive courage?
No, it didn't.
Huh?
It was such a peace about it. There was like, I can work at Home Depot. Like, you know, your career aspirations shift, right? And I was like, I surely would love to go make more things, but I'm also like, if our family stability in our life is better served, me working at Home Depot, which actually would be pretty cool. I'm good with it. Like, I'm fine. Like, that didn't, and it's financially risky and all kinds of things. I didn't realize how financially risky it was going to be. And at the same time, met with Andrew and a few others. I looked around at a few different projects and was like, so what's the next thing for me? And had a nice, you know, severance from DreamWorks. And so had a little breathing room to just kind of go, okay, I've got a couple months to kind of think through things. And so we spent some time camping as a family, you know, and kind of did a bunch of shopping of like different projects, and we kind of took that on the road with us and camped for 3 weeks, you know, all across the United States, and came back from that with a real clarity of like, okay, I think it's Wingfeather Saga. That's the thing that I'm supposed to go
let me
partner
just
and pursue.
Point something out that I've noticed among highly successful leaders, artists, influencers. The people who really make a difference, they have an independence or a sovereignty about them. And I'm not like comparing them, like not the sovereignty of God, not,
right.
Not the big S, the little s. They have a sovereignty about them away from finances and glory or acclaim. And so for me, I'm just going to tell you, my huge temptation at that moment would have been, I'm going to take the big name. I'm going to go to the big space. We're going to pack everybody else up and move. And I'm probably not going to go camping with my kids to figure this out.
Yeah. Okay. That's a great note. So I remember early in my career, there was actually a point as I left Impact before joining Steelehouse. This would have been in 2002, just after Grace was born, that I was like, babe, I think we're supposed to go out to LA. Like, I think we're supposed to make that move. And we were prepared to do it. To go prove that whether or not do I have the skills it would take to compete in that market. Could I be one of those storytellers?
Yeah.
In whatever facet. You know, you want to go. It's like, hey, babe, I want to go try for the pros in sports or something like this. It's funny. I ran into my buddy Craig Trevithick last night at the airport.
Yeah.
And we hadn't seen each other in forever, never. And he brought up, he's like, hey, Chris, Heather was down there. She's like, we were just chatting among the three of us, and he's like, "Do you remember that we would like always compete for grades in our film classes?" And I was like, "I don't remember that, but now that you say it," and he's like, "Yeah, no, it was a definite competition for me." And he's like, "You were always getting the A, and I'd get like a B, and like I just and I was like, "Oh man, that's fantastic." But there's this proving that you want to prove that you can that you have the stuff,
have what
right?
it takes.
And so there was this like, we should make the move out west and go for it. And then Mark Steele was developing Steelehouse into this other thing, and he and Kevin, I was like, and they asked if I'd come over and help them develop, post-production. Like they did, they were always outsourcing, but could we do a whole department there? And I was like, yeah, that sounds, so we passed on doing that test. Well, fast forward to 2012, DreamWorks acquires us, Veggie Tales. And it was like this, like, okay, all right, we're part of DreamWorks now, and they can all of us, right? And we have to prove that we're worthy, right? And it was the funniest thing. So they flew us out separately. So it was myself, Brian Roberts, and Mike Naraki. Basically, were the three running the production side, right? So I was producer, and they were the two directors, and then doing a lot of the writing and so forth. And they flew us out separately to get to know us, right? And because they don't know what they got. They're like, we bought this Nashville thing. They may be bumpkins. We think they wear shoes, but they love Christian stuff. They speak Christian. And so
we don't speak that language.
We don't know who they are, and they could be ultra zealots. We just don't know. And they got us out there and found that we were just experienced professionals, having done a lot of animation production of a very high quality. And they were like, "You're our people.
Yeah,
like we all love stories. You were just telling stories that are faith informed, but we're still driving it with characters that are very funny, with great stories that are compelling for families." So we were kindred. And what was I remember remarkable about that moment in 2012 was like, oh, I passed. In a very weird path. Yep. Right? I didn't have to move to LA to prove it. Had passed. There was like this sniff test. Oh, yeah, you're a professional just like us. Great, let's go. We all have different skills. Like we all have different projects we're attached to. The director on our Wingfeather series right now directed Home on the Range, which is not a good movie, and he would say that to you as well. From Disney, it was kind of after Beauty and the Beast and Lion King, and when they were kind of sliding down a little bit. And he's very open about it. He's like, we could have done better work. But point is, everybody is a professional, and you have a hit and you have a miss, and you're okay with that. But we're all working professionals, and I had passed and gotten that attaboy from them. So when in 2015 they were like, "Hey, come move and be a part of that whole system," I was like, I didn't need the validation any further. Like I felt like I'd passed it. I'd been an employee of DreamWorks Animation for 3 years, and I can play at that level. Now the question is, okay, I have that skill. How should that skill be applied? Okay, I am of the ability, right, based on my colleagues that I'd worked with. So how should I use that ability? Where could I step into where I could bring that ability to bring something to life? You follow?
Yes.
Like I've just figured out I have a pretty good fastball. They measured it finally. My fastball is awesome.
Yeah, you're 98.
How do I use it? I could go here. I could go here. How could I use it? I could go coach. I could go what are the things you can use with that skill? That's the pause moment, I would tell you, of 2015. It wasn't the obvious conclusion, go get paid, right? The obvious conclusion was, all right, what should I do?
So 2015 moved you into a financial, like we all go through this, right? Where it's pretty tough.
Crazy.
Okay.
Really hard. So the decision was made. I want to work on Wingfeather Saga. We want to help bring it to life. Let's put this skill and expertise that I'd gained over the years, and let's see if we can use Chris Wall as a widget to kind of press into that and see what happens, right? And met with Andrew and was like, hey, I don't want to just like option the property. That's normally what you do in these situations. You just kind of license and say, hey, I want an option, and I'll go develop it. And you, author, stay over there and don't mess this up, because it's quite challenging, because authors often have a certain vision of their work. I'd worked enough with Andrew to know he was fairly collaborative, and was like, hey, I'd rather make sure that your DNA stays in the project, and could we partner, you and I form a company together, and that way we're both bound at the hip to make this thing the right way, you know. And so we did. So we set off, formed our company, Shining Isle Productions.
So there was enough professional respect for one another that you're willing to tie yourself like that.
That's right. Yeah. And we'd done some other stuff over the years to kind of know that about each other, and had a lot of trust, and you know, kind of the, you know, you're like chefs at a restaurant. Like we enjoyed the tastes that each of us were into. the things that we liked about it. And that's really subjective. So I think anytime a creative partnership, it's really about measuring, do we like the same things?
Yeah.
Because if we don't, that's going to be fitful.
Yeah.
Right?
Eventually you'll see it come down to the end.
Yeah. And we're not perfectly aligned, to be clear. Like we have diverging tastes, but they share a common rooting in truth, like where things are rooted in eternal truths, where that comes through, whether that's in some secular music or a movie. We both go, ooh, there's a bit of truth.
Yeah.
That's real. That's rooted. And we're both also equally meh about where it's Christian overtoned propaganda, right? Where it's like, let's start with truth and see if we can't fit a story around it like that. Like, because it's not good, authentic art at that point, right? It's something else. And so we were aligned on those, even though our tastes are different, we're aligned in the things that we share at a deeper level. So off we go. I then had to figure out how to pay for life, right? Like, what is the thing? So I was doing some freelance producing, just picking up things here and there. And ultimately, we should get an investor to help us do some of this work. How do you do that? And figuring out, okay, we'll get an investor who could help us develop Wingfeather Saga and put a little money so I could have a little something to pay bills with, you know, and it was literally taking income that we, you know, had down to half or less, you know, for 3 or 4 years roughly in that run. It was tough. It was really tough, like very thin, you know, and really trusting God to like get things figured out, you know, and my kids all like were into it. Like, you know, Dad, we believe in this. Of course, Heather and I were joined in that. Like this is exactly what we're supposed to be doing. And whatever that meant and you know, relying on government aid, you know, to help get us through that. And I remember at that point, there was a few friends that I could sniff out were not into it. Yeah. You know, there's 6 children. You're taking a big risk right now in your 40s. It's just the move, right? Yeah. If this risk doesn't pay off, you know, have you know, and it is you. I remember wrestling with that like quite a lot. You know, just going, have I risked too much? And it came to its peak at the end of 2020, Christmas 2020. I had finished producing this other kids show, the Slugs and Bugs show. That Slugs and Bugs thing I mentioned with Andrew and Randall. Randall went on and made a whole thing out of that, like 6 different albums, and they came to me saying, "Hey, we're thinking about a TV show." And it was early in 2018, and we're still working on Wingfeather, but I had spare cycles. Like, yeah, so I pitched a TV show, and they took it. I'd never created a TV show in my life, and suddenly I'm an executive producer, and it was definitely my, you know, loop in the wilderness of learning some things. Slugs and Bugs was not wilderness, but it was my time of preparation, right? Before I'd be ready for this next thing. And I didn't know at the time, but it was really formative to what God was going to lead us to with Wingfeather. And I remember thinking, this is kind of distracting me from the thing I'm supposed to be doing, right? I want to make Wingfeather. Why am I going to spend, and it being 2 seasons, 2 years of this Slugs and Bugs thing while still pulling Wingfeather along? And I'm like, I feel like I'm doing, but this is what I'm supposed to do. I mean, I felt peace about it, but it was a strange situation. But it was some money. It wasn't fantastic, but it was okay. We can pay bills. We can get through it. And we got to the end of that, right? 2020. Wingfeather had advanced, but then, you know, 2020 COVID had really disrupted the entertainment industry, and so a lot of our hopes for that had gone dead. And I remember sitting at Christmas and my kids saying, "So, Dad, what's your job in January?" And I said, "I don't know. I don't have a job. Like, I just finished Slugs, and I don't know what's next." Are you okay with that? Yeah. Because God's been faithful, and I probably should be more freaked out because we have, you know, life and a mortgage and everything else, but I don't know. You know, we'll see. Yeah. And so we stepped into the new year, and I remember it was oddly, it was on Inauguration Day, you know, which was full of fear in 21.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was like, is there going to be a revolt? What are we into? And Grace was driving from Nashville back here to school in Tulsa, and I was worried about her being on the road, you know, just because what was it going to be like that day? And it was just a tension-filled day, and I happened to be near Andrew's place, and he had been doing this read aloud of the Wingfeather Saga all throughout 2020, and then finishing right at the beginning of 21. And it was the end of that. It was, so whatever that day, it was January 23rd or 24th, something like this. And I happened to be there, and it was the last chapter of the last book. He was going to read it, and I was up there with Charlotte, our youngest, and she had very much been a part of our journey. And I said, "Hey, can we sit in the room and just be there when you read the last bit?" And he's like, "Yeah, that'd be great," you know. And that afternoon, as we're headed to his place, I get a message from Angel Studios. hey, we're all in. We're going to make Wingfeather Saga our next Angel Studios original after The Chosen. And we're so excited.
Wow.
Lots of tears. And Andrew and I cried before he did the reading, and then we cried, because the book is so powerful. Just a lot of tears.
But the timing on that is spectacular.
It was unbelievable.
Last chapter, reading aloud, boom. Now we're going to make the animated films.
And I didn't, it was I guess I have a job.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then it immediately met with like, okay, what's next? And all that happened in 21 was just so complicated. Like I didn't realize how complicated it was going to be, developing a business unit, getting ready to do, funding with the Security and Exchange Commission and going to the banking, having it notarized that I, Chris Wall, am going to go to a funding round. And like all that was like just this, I can't imagine him ever stepping into it, but it took going through this really dark period, and being settled and like, all right, God has led me through the steps up to this point carefully. And I trust that he's got the next thing that's going to happen here. And there's a real peace. You'd think there'd be a lot of anxiety, but even across the family, Heather and the kids, everybody was like, we're good. And they all felt, Heather way more than me was like, no, Wingfeather's going to happen, and she's like, it's going to, but I just was talking to a friend this last week. And I actually pulled up, I had my, the email, one of the many emails from Netflix rejecting us, right? Telling us that Wingfeather Saga wasn't good enough and that it didn't meet their expectations and they didn't like this or that, and those are hard letters to get, and they can really flatten you. And then you're like, man, am I imagining something that's appealing here that nobody else thinks is actually any good? Do I love something that nobody else loves? And that's a faith journey too, right?
Yeah.
Am I so devoted to what my discipleship path and the way I want to see my life formed in the way of Jesus that I feel weird in my culture, right?
Well, I actually had that same thought whenever I articulated to you on text what this podcast is about.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like
it's blah, 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 blah.
And I was like, God, that was like a lot of words, but
Yeah, and I think that in those moments, that like the Holy Spirit giving our hearts the assurance that no, this is for you.
Yes,
I get that this won't make sense to other people, but certain parts of your community will rally around. I think there's two things here at play. One is we follow our heart's curiosities and where the Holy Spirit leads, and then we check it with our community. Right, our community will affirm us that what we're doing, and it starts with our spouse and our family that goes, yeah, no, I see it, and there will be things that will be thrown out. That Jesus was rejected in Nazareth. Parts that like I can't see that in you.
Yeah.
And you have to recognize those kind of obstacles are like, it's okay. But then there's other parts of that are like, I may be sniffing something wrong and I need to maybe check it again and make sure it's the Holy Spirit and not something else that's cueing me. There's some sort of aspiration that's deep in me that is, wrong. So going through that season and having full trust that like, no, this is where the Holy Spirit's leading us and I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be something, what it bloomed into this last year and what we just got back from is hard to get your head around.
Yes.
When it goes, right?
Yeah.
It's the overnight success after 10 years, right? Kind of.
Yeah, you were like,
and
can I really handle this activity?
And then can you manage it, right? Then can you keep up with it? And I don't know. I hope I can. It's still in play, I had in the middle of all that kind of build up read Ed Catmull's Creativity Inc.
Okay.
The story of the formation of Pixar, right? And it was really about the decisions being made and the practices and ways in which they've done. And one of the things Ed said early is he talks about hiring people that threaten you. So a lot of times in corporate life, you'll hire people that are not as good as you, so they don't threaten you.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And he was like, hire people that are better than you, that kind of make you uneasy, that they're going to take your job because you'll be better for it, And so assembling this team, over the last year and year and a half, has been really remarkable to pull people in that scare me.
Yeah.
That I'm like, wow, they are really good. They are better than me,
Yes.
And leaning into that,
but then over here on the other side saying, no, look, the Lord, you've brought me to this place to lead these people. And whether they're better than me at this or not is irrelevant because of the election you have over my life. There's some tension in that.
Yeah. And there's I have clear responsibility to serve those people the best I can, to create the space for them to do what they do magically, right?
Yep.
whether that's in management or whether that's in artistic endeavors. There's all those pieces you have to have present, making sure I've given them the right space to do that, but then providing the leadership of we're about this and we're not about this.
Yeah.
And we're going to go this way. It's not what we create. It's how we do that. We had to spend, this was awful, Shay. I had to spend like weeks making an employee handbook. Blah. This is like the worst.
Can somebody please write this for me and just put it in my hand?
No, so they did. So we did a draft of one. We had these HR consultants that gave me a draft, and it was awful. It was like it's like if I got this as an employee, I would just laugh and throw it away. Like it's so bad. Like just corporate speak and all the you know.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I don't want that version. I want something that's full of life and like that's interesting and points us in the how will we work together.
Yeah.
What are our values, and you have to articulate these things and like. Those kind of processes are miserable, but something that helps you to play at a higher level, to like be ready for what opportunities may come, and so anyways, we've been through a lot of those, in the last year, and I'm now sitting here today, just so delighted at the people that have gathered around, that have contributed their abilities and strengths. That see a vision of what we're making and where we're going that started way so long ago, and now it's coming to life, and they're now going, oh well, this always should have been here, and it's the place when you're making a play into what they call open water, where there's not a defined thing that's been in that space yet. Yep. We're going to make a national chain of a restaurant that serves chicken sandwiches, That's a play. That's like, there's nothing there yet, and you have to go and you have to kind of pursue and that's certainly what we stepped into here, is that we're going. We call it sometimes between the stools. There's the secular market of entertainment and there's the Christian market of entertainment, and ours fits right in between. And so we're going right in that space where nothing has existed. Veggie Tales absolutely captured that market in the preschool for sure, but otherwise. There's just hardly anything here, and certainly not in the age segment we're going for with this 8 to 12 action adventure, kind of this territory. Yep. It's intimidating, but it's amazing once you get a little bit of you get some beachhead, then everybody's like, oh yeah, totally, no, I saw that. Yeah. And you're like, yeah, because it's here now, and let's keep working to build that out so that we don't lose this again. And I think that's, as we sit here right now in the early part of 22. That's what I feel. It's like, man, God has guided us to this point. We've landed something, and we've got a little spark. We've got a little something that's going. Can we hold this and expand off of it and help to create space for others to come into? I'm not interested in selfishly like build an empire. Not at all. Can we create space so that other creators like us can come in and say, yeah, I also want to work in that same space that I haven't had the opportunity to because of the large industries that are around us, and I have great hope that can happen.
I've noticed a gap in entertainment because I consume entertainment like everybody else. And it seems like right now what our culture is feeling is family entertainment is either for little kids or not. Like PG is gone and dead. There's not a PG. Like if I go to PG on, it's like, Disney type, kid stuff, or it's, I can't show this to my kids. Right. So I think there's a huge gap right there, a huge opportunity coming, but it's definitely underserved.
Yeah. And oddly underserved. So I talked to a bunch of our animators this last week and artists, and we reference with Wingfeather Saga, The Princess Bride, fairly often. Yeah, we love that movie. That our series is somewhere, the audience tells us this, that we're some sort of mix of Princess Bride meets Lord of the Rings. Like it's something in that space, And I hope we can capture that same tone in what we're doing. But Princess Bride, what they kept bemoaning is like, why aren't there more like that? And Princess Bride, to be clear, was a failure at the box office. It didn't work. And then it worked.
Yeah. Right. Total cult following.
Yeah. I think about the first Muppet movie, the one that the reboot a few years ago, that was, the second one wasn't as good, but the first one with Amy Adams was brilliant and was like, you know, because it was in that PG territory, but a whole family could have a grand old time at it, you know.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit scary, and you know, Princess Bride definitely is that, right? There's swordplay. There's a guy getting stabbed, right? You know, like it's like real peril, you know, and the ROUSs, you know, and like it's got some intensity. It's like, yeah, here we go, get some grit on it, but it's also not so far that we're in this older territory that my whole family can rally around. Yeah, there's a gap.
Yeah.
The other piece of that I will say is in that same space, providing material that is rooted in eternal truths, right? And I think we talk a lot about the where I see Veggie really captured is this place where it was first entertaining, that Bob the tomato and Larry the cucumber are really entertaining. They themselves are a comedic duo who could just go. Right.
Yes.
And that's the skill of Phil Vischer as an entertainer and Mike Naraki as an entertainer. They're just talented, funny people.
Yeah.
Okay. They would use those entertaining characters to tell stories that were very funny and inside of them be full of eternal truth. Yes. At Veggie, we called it our nugget of truth. Each time we told a story, what's our nugget of truth? What's the thing that we want? And we'll capture that in music. So a child walks away humming the tune, you know, God is bigger than the boogeyman, you know, it's a silly idea, but it's also like an eternal idea. What are those ways? But it's entertaining, right? And the song is hooky, right? It's well written. It's you hit the level of expertise of craft. And then inside of that, there's you're rooting in some truth, you know, because we all know high craft that doesn't say anything. Right?
Yes.
Movies, television series that we watch and like, wow, they had nothing to say. You finish it and like, wow, wish you'd worked at that a little harder because you could have said something really profound and you did not. You know,
we brought the kids to Uncharted.
Oh yeah, how was that?
You know,
I haven't seen it yet.
It was amazing. At the same, I mean, it was amazing. It was amazing because there's really not anything too bad in it.
Okay.
Like I didn't feel like I was in the theaters with my kids. I didn't feel like I had to fast forward it. Sure. Right. But when I got back, I'm like, what did I just do? I'm exhausted. Like there was nothing in it other than just swashbuckling, crazy, you know, action.
Yeah.
You know, there was no redemptive nothing. Now, would I go see it again? Yeah, of course. It was entertaining. Yeah. But it was not anything above that.
So I think that when it hits though, and you're able to go, kids, that thing that just happened in that story, the thing that character just experienced, that is true. And you just kind of can rally around. Those are pieces that I get super excited about. We just watched King Richard. The Venus and Serena Williams story of their dad as their coach.
Will Smith.
Have you seen it?
No, but I just read Will Smith's book. Will.
Oh, yeah.
It's fascinating.
Great film. Highly recommend. Of just a strong family, strong father. Clearly, you know, and I love late in the film, he's like, I'm not a great papa. Like I have made my mistakes. You know, I hope that what you think of me is that I've done these things for you, you know, to shield you from the world and to, you know, like it's strong in that, like it's like, yeah. And it lands in places where Heather and I were literally fist bumping, like, yep, there it is. That's fantastic. You know, you're getting into the stuff that's actually meaningful and could shape. And I think that, you know, stories are really important for that, right? They shape our moral imagination. They can affect our cultures because they you know, our imagination is one of those first things that like God gave us as sub creators, right? It goes to Adam, name the animals. That's a huge privilege. Name the animals and the naming process. Like I think there's something mystical and magical about that. Like was a lion fully a lion before it was given its name? You know, like how much power did Adam wield over like, you're a lion, you know, like, bam, there it is. And now this is who I am, you know, and like we as fathers, we name, you know, and we will do these things. And it's the role of parents to name and to bring into life, you know, these children and find their calling and like all of that, you know. So as sub creators, we have this great power that we can use for foolishness, right? We can actually use our imaginations for absolute foolishness, right? And just wasted things, right?
Yeah.
Vain imaginations is what scripture calls it. And we can use those imaginations to really change our culture. You know, that all through cultures, you see the power of the bard, right? Yeah. Who can come in and through music and other means and storytelling, be able to shape the hearts and culture of a people, right? that's our space. And so we consume so much media that is the jester.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's interesting as I'm saying this, I realize you're kind of comparing the jester versus the bard.
Yeah.
Right? If that makes better sense to people, that a lot of what we go into is just the jester. Secret Life of Pets, really funny. Just a jester. Like, doesn't do anything for me. But there's others that are like the bard, where it comes in and like, you had something to say.
Well, for me, you too.
Sure. Yeah.
You too. You're like, whoa.
I'm processing something, right?
Yeah. And, not all the songs actually make a lot of
right.
linear sense, but it's just like, where's the truth just getting like oozing out of it, And I remember you just reminded me of some really wonderful times. One time we drove to Tennessee for vacation with my in-laws, and I read out loud. I decided I would read out loud The Hobbit out loud to the kids. Max was 4, Isaac was 6, Issa was 8. And I'd read The Hobbit, but reading it out loud was special in the car. Took a long time. Voice is dry. I'm not a great reader, maybe, exhausting, but that was an amazing moment. There's just that kind of art is saying something, Now, of course, I just became the most cliche Gen X Christian dad ever, reading Tolkien and listening to you too, but who cares?
Yeah, you just rung the bell for sure.
Yeah,
but that's exactly it, though. I mean, I think that as we guide our kids to that, I think that as parents, we want to point out for our kids, like, hey, here's this is more meaningful. This is going to land with you and is going to leave something behind. And I heard from a friend years ago about media and our families and just how we consume and working very hard to diligently pull down the sheen. To kind of like turn on the house lights on entertainment and get behind the gears and help my kids to understand the underlying philosophy, to wrestle with it.
Yeah.
Right. There's actually a moment in King Richard where they watch Cinderella together and he finishes it. He says, all right. And it's demonstrated in the movie as though this is like everything they do together.
Yeah.
The kids all together. Okay. What did that mean? Go. What did you get? What did you get? What did it mean? What was it about? What was the story trying to tell us? What were the things? And unpack it. Get into it. Is it true? Is it false? If it's false, let's all right now flush it out. And my kids, my daughters especially, hate watching movies with me, especially in the romantic comedy territory. I find them to be the most nefarious. So I'll stop it. Wait, that is not true about relationships. That is hot garbage, and you need to reject it right away.
Yeah.
It's trying to wind its way around your little heart about the peak of romance and sexuality and things that everything they're saying right there is not true. So I'm going to overtly like make a moment and make it awkward, and we're going to all spit it out together. Now, press play. Let's continue. And because we'll journey through those stories together. And that was what my friend was challenging, is that as your kids are going through these stories and consuming and participating in music and the bard and the jester, sit with them shoulder to shoulder and help them process through. Commercial on TV finishes. What was the underlying, what were they doing there in their storytelling? With the gifts they have, what were they actually driving at?
Do you remember several years back they remade Cinderella?
Yeah.
Into a feature-length film. It wasn't animated.
Yep.
We watched that.
Yeah.
And that had such incredible impact, and there was some truth in there.
Big time.
I went and brought it home and watched it with my daughter and 2 boys.
Okay.
And I just, but it was a little bit to watch Issa watch it, but I wanted my boys to see the truth of how to respect women. And for whatever reason, that movie encapsulated that. And I don't know, you're just talking and that's blowing up in my mind right now.
And the power of, that one, forgiveness, just like this, like, what's true is I can forgive and walk, and oh my gosh, that like revenge isn't going to satisfy, But like that story, just the storyteller's working really hard to get to some truths that are eternal truths. Now, whether they're believers in our faith or it doesn't matter. We share a lot of eternal truths across a lot of, all things are speaking God's truth, right? Like creation will cry out, right? So I think there's things that we discover. We were talking about this earlier, but I think one of the positionings I mentioned at the beginning of our talk, is that we're going to go through some struggles and some trials together, but the position is one of curiosity and hope for what God's future is for us, right? Not one of like, well, he just didn't give us enough and I'm just barely making it here, right? That's a heart choice.
Yeah.
I think in the same way, there is this celebrating the truths that we discover in our culture, right? Saying, wow, did you see Cinderella? Yeah, did you? Wow, okay, that. Versus, did you, hating on and like pouring fire on the hot garbage that is something negative, right?
Yes.
Why spend the creative energy God's given to draw so much attention to something that's not good?
Yeah.
Like, acknowledge it, that exists in the world, but let's shine the light forward on what is wonderful. Hey, did you see King Richard, right? like point to the things that are bringing value to our families and are bringing joy and the other things will sort themselves out. By lack of attention, they will wither. Right? Rather than let's all get our protest signs and spend a ton of emotional energy and creative energy shaming something, and not to say that we don't call out the snakes, right? To say, hey, that's a snake. That viper is going to hurt you and that's got poison in it.
Yep.
Right? So I get it. But then that's it. Like we called it, named it, move on.
Well, I think Christians have done that for my entire life in regards to entertainment.
Sure. It's been a part of our phase of, kind of 70s, 80s, 90s, of just drawing a lot of energy towards what's bad, and like, yeah, I know there's bad things in the world. Always has been, right? Always has been.
Well, there obviously is a bit of hypocrisy in that is we call it out as we consume it.
Ironically. We did that with Veggie. I mean, we'd interview families and talk about, tell us about the entertainment choices you make as Christian families, and we do these big, super expensive research studies. And he'd come back with all this stuff of like, I want my kids to only, consume good things, and I want them to learn eternal truths and their stuff. And it was all like super aspirational. That's great. Okay, now tell us about on a day-to-day, what are your kids watch and consume? Disney Channel, Nickelodeon. Like it was no different than anybody else.
Like everybody else, it was the same stuff.
It was all like platitudes, but like the reality is the kids were choosing what they're going to choose, And for me, it was a galvanizing moment because I remember one of those, we got those back in like, I don't know, 2010, somewhere in that territory. And I remember it was a galvanizing moment for me of like, okay, so the fact is, the only way we win here as storytellers is if we win the children. We've got to win them. If I'm trying to win mom, dad, or grandparents, I may win them aspirationally, and they may buy a product that goes and sits on its shelf, but its efficacy in the family is significantly reduced.
That reminds me of some
kid
of
isn't
the,
into it,
Yeah, that reminds me of some of the James Dobson stuff that I don't know, my in-laws have purchased for my kids.
And they didn't watch it, right? They didn't consume it.
It never made.
And that's a problem, because if you're trying to disciple kids in truth and help them to consume things that are full of truth, and yet you're offering them paltry stuff, it is a problem. It's a real problem. And that was one of the real frustrating points for me in my career was in, I think it was 06, 07, somewhere there. We'd done a bunch of market research, and Veggie Tales is 95% of the kids in faith market, And it's like, okay, that was after like 10 years of Veggie existing and nothing else had come to compete with it. That's not normal. In the regular entertainment world, when something is successful, there's 12 others like it.
Yes.
And one of those pops, right? In the restaurant market, right? Somebody makes a restaurant with this, there's going to be 3 others that come up alongside of it, and one of them will work, right? And may pass it, right? It's the same but different is how all of this works, right? It's in food and it's in entertainment. I often think comparing restaurant and entertainment is so helpful. Kind of gets you outside of yourself. Like, what am I doing that's the same and different? Like, what am I offering that's actually like, I'll go see that.
Like your chef.
Yeah, exactly. Early. The sous chef thing. Like, we're not going to not serve chicken, but we're going to serve it with this garnish, right? We got a little something extra. Hot chicken, Nashville. So in that, it was really disheartening because Phil and Mike had gotten that beachhead of like, they had to fight with Walmart. Walmart's like, hey, we hear about this Veggie Tales thing in 1994, 95. And so we're willing to pull it in our stores, but you're going to have to back off on the religious content. Which is funny now, right? If you back off that religious content, we'll put it in our stores. And Phil was like, no, thanks. No, we're going to keep ours. A year later, they came back and like, we don't care what you have in that. We want it on our shelves, right?
Yeah.
And it moved the market. Great. Let's go. Get some more. Well, nobody followed the same pattern, right?
Yeah.
Of entertain, earn the kids.
Yes.
Like be high craft. Do your job, right?
Do the work.
Test it. And if it doesn't work,
do something else.
Do something. Work on it. Like fix it. Like that is the discipline that the secular market has is a discipline to work at it till it works.
Yes.
Mostly, right? There's pockets of that industry that are terrible. But when you think about like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there's a discipline to work that material till it works.
Yes.
Do you know this? That in situational comedy on television, a lot of people don't know this thing. That, okay, The Office, the desk where Pam sits at, there's a door to the left of her desk.
Okay.
That's never opened. The entire series.
Okay.
It's just a door. That door is to the writer's room. In practice, they have an audience. They run a scene. They stop. The writers all come out onto the set. Cut. Okay, we got to laugh at this joke and this joke and this joke, but that joke didn't get a laugh. So new joke for you. Change. Jim, say this line instead. Pam, say this line instead. Okay, do it again. They all go back in. All right, run it again. And they run it again until they get a laugh every single time.
Oh my God.
That's discipline. That is craft. And that is hard. Okay?
Yes.
You understand?
It's grit.
It is expensive. It's highly risky, but with high craft and high caliber writers and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it works. You see?
Yeah.
You can imagine in the Christian market.
Yeah.
I wrote the script. It was Holy Writ. I remember in college, there's this idea that when I write, I'm inspired by the Holy Spirit, and I write something, and it's wow, it's so good, you know. And Laura Holland, who is retiring from ORU, head of our communication arts department there, and you know, my daughter's getting to be under her, and we're celebrating the end of a long, wonderful finish. But she was one of those early people who was like really ardent about this idea that like God is in the rewrite.
Yeah.
God is in the that was not a good take. Try it again.
That stunk. Let's be honest.
That craftsmanship is what our culture respects, right?
Yes.
In our music and our storytelling. And I think so often it's just we fall short in the craftsmanship of like, you should be held to the same standard of earning that audience with good work, not just because it's a clever hooky thing that just.
Let's just talk reality. Reality is it doesn't work.
That's right. It ends up on a shelf, right?
Yes.
The reality is the discipline isn't there, and you tried it doesn't work. Now, I say all that to say, and it can sound like a ton of hubris. I have no idea if Wingfeather Saga is going to work.
No, we don't.
Okay? Because what we're working from is the books work. Andrew did a wonderful thing there. And they are really wonderful works. We're hoping to translate it into a television series. So as I sit with you here today, I hope it works. I can't possibly sit here and say, oh yeah, we got a home run. I'm pulling some of the best talent I can pull together to make something special. And I've told the team, I'm like, hey, here's the deal. What we're going to make together is what we are all going to make together.
Yes.
We are not Pixar. We are not Disney. We are not those other companies. We are this group of artists. And we're going to make what we make. And we're going to be true to what we make here. And that may or may not be successful in the marketplace. No way to know for sure.
Until we know.
And then we'll know. But in the meantime, we're just going to work our tails off and see if we can't make something and call each other to, hey, I think I could be better. I think that could be better. And an open, collaborative environment where there's a lot of trust emotionally and a lot of trust, you know, relationally. I just got back from an overseas trip to Czech Republic where a number of our animators and artists are. It was a lot of commitment of time and resource to build relational trust, right? Ultimately, to build community that says, okay, now we can work together in a way that's but our bonds are thicker.
The relational trust comes off the other side of your expertise. They had to trust your ability to do it.
That's right.
Your technician. They had to trust the technician in you.
Sure.
And then the leader in you.
Yes.
And
with that trust, when I say, hey, I appreciate the art you've offered, it's close.
Yep.
It's got to go over to here, and then it'll meet with what else we need, right? They have to have trust that goes, yes, sir, I believe it, right? And I want to make something really. I don't want to phone it in. I want to be like, fine, whatever you want. Here's your dumb thing. It's no, I believe in what you're seeing. And I'm gonna go here, and it's gonna be part of the mosaic, and it's gonna be amazing, right? But one of the two things can happen. If you have relational trust there, distrust goes the other way, right? Which is like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, right?
Yeah. and the eyeballs. You can just feel it.
Sure, I'll do that for you. You know,
trust says this: if the door flies open, the writer comes out and says that wasn't funny, you're okay.
Yeah,
right.
And you're also aware in that moment that I just tried it, nobody laughed. What else you got? You know, there's a discipline of like, I just did it and nobody thought it was great.
Well, let me summarize this conversation because, Chris, This has been amazing.
We're kind of going all over the place.
No, it's okay though. But it is useful because in a man's life, when he begins to transition in his middle, when we get to the middle, when we get to our age, okay, the Lord is going to transition us. He's going to move us to the person we thought we were going to make on our own, to the person He's made us to be. And then He's going to, that's identity. And then He's going to move us to the roles that He has for us so that people will get that nugget of truth. And that nugget of truth is always the presence of God in something. Okay. So what I saw exhibited in this conversation, I love grit, humility, long suffering, willingness to take risk, even financial risk, even put your family at risk. And then there's this spectacular hope that it's going to turn into something amazing. I see all of that wrapped up into this, and I knew that's why you needed to sit with me. And so thank you so much for spending time with me and for making yourself available. And I would just say to anybody listening to look out for the Wingfeather Saga and see what comes of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Shay. It's been great to chat with you and to share. It's been a long journey together. As an outside observer watching all these moves, and well, even that little anecdotal story of you're in my daughter's bedroom negotiating a deal. I had no idea. And you keep popping up in my life this way. I'm curious what the Lord's going to do.
Yeah. So,
same.
All right. See you soon.